The rain on Station 7 was not real rain. It was recycled water that fell from pipes in the ceiling every 6 hours to keep the air from becoming too dry. Park stood under a broken awning and watched the fake rain fall on the metal streets. He was tired, he was broke, and he was running out of options. 3 years ago had owned a small cargo ship called the Morning Star. It was not a beautiful ship, but it was his. He had used it to move supplies between human colonies in the Outer Rim. The work was honest. The pay was enough. Life was simple. Then the trade guild decided that humans were charging too little for transport services. They said it was unfair competition. The Galactic Council agreed. New taxes were placed on human shipping companies, fees that made no sense, inspections that took weeks. Within 18 months had lost everything. He sold the Morning Star just to pay his debts. Now he worked small jobs on stations like this one, cleaning, loading cargo, whatever kept food in his stomach and a roof over his head, but he never stopped dreaming of the stars. That was why he came to the auction. The building was old and forgotten, sitting at the edge of the station where the lights flickered and the air smelled like rust. A sign above the door said "Salvage Auctions" in 5 different languages. The paint was peeling. Half the letters were missing. Pushed open the door and stepped inside. The auction hall was nearly empty. A few scattered chairs faced a raised platform where items would be displayed. Only 2 other beings sat in the audience. One was a merchant with blue scales and 4 arms, busy looking at a small screen. The other was something did not recognize, a creature made of what looked like floating stones held together by purple light. The auctioneer stood on the platform. He was tall and thin, with skin the color of old paper and 7 eyes arranged in a circle on his face. He looked bored. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. "Lot 34, the auctioneer announced. His voice echoed in the empty room. "Cargo container, unknown contents, recovered from the drift. Starting bid 200 credits. Nobody raised their hand. 150 credits. Silence. 100 credits, anyone. The merchant glanced up, then went back to his screen. Moving on, the auctioneer sighed. Sat in the back row and watched. Lot after lot passed with no bids. Damaged engines, broken navigation systems, cargo containers filled with things that had rotted centuries ago. This was the bottom of the salvage market, the things that nobody wanted. He had 847 credits in his account, enough to live for another month if he was careful, not enough to buy anything useful, but still he stayed. Something kept him in that chair. Maybe it was hope, maybe it was stupidity, could never tell the difference. Lot 77, the auctioneer said. There was something different in his voice now. Not excitement, but curiosity. Class light cruiser, origin unknown, recovered from a dead zone near the Outer Rim. Ship appears functional but has not been activated. No registration on file. No previous owners listed. A hologram flickered to life above the platform. It showed a ship unlike anything had seen before. The cruiser was sleek and dark, shaped almost like a teardrop. Its hull was smooth, without the patches and repairs that marked most salvage ships. It looked almost new. Starting bid, 800 credits. Felt his heart stop. 800 credits for a functional cruiser was impossible. Ships like this sold for hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions. There had to be something wrong with it. There had to be a catch. He looked around the room. The merchant was not paying attention. The floating stone creature had no arms to raise. The auctioneer was already sighing, preparing to move on. Before knew what he was doing, his hand was in the air. 800 credits, the auctioneer said, all 7 eyes turning to look at him. Bid from the human in the back. Do I hear 850? Silence. Going once. Held his breath. Going twice. The merchant finally looked up. He studied the hologram for a moment, then shrugged and went back to his screen. Sold to the human for 800 credits. The gavel fell. The sound echoed through the empty hall like thunder. Sat there for a long moment trying to understand what had just happened. He had bought a ship, a real ship, for less than the cost of a used ground vehicle. Something was very wrong. An hour later, he stood in Docking Bay 47, staring at his new purchase. The cruiser looked even stranger in person. Its hull was made of a material he did not recognize, dark and smooth, almost like glass, but it felt warm under his fingers. There were no visible seams, no bolts, no welding marks. The ship looked like it had been grown rather than built. The boarding ramp lowered with a soft hiss when he approached. He had not touched anything. He had not sent any commands. The ship simply opened for him as if it had been waiting. Climbed the ramp slowly, his boots echoing on the strange material. The interior was dark. Emergency lights glowed faintly along the floor, casting long shadows down the corridor. "Hello," he called out. His voice sounded small in the silence. No answer came. He found the cockpit at the front of the ship. The controls were unlike any he had seen before, curved panels with symbols that shifted and changed as he watched. But somehow he understood them. Somehow he knew exactly what each one did. That was impossible. He had never seen this technology before. He had never trained on anything like this. Yet when he reached out and touched the main console, the ship came alive around him. Lights flickered on. Systems hummed to life. A soft voice spoke in a language he did not recognize, then switched to Korean. "Welcome back, pilot. Stasis mode ended. All systems operational." "Welcome back." Felt cold. He had never been on this ship before. He had never seen it before today. But the ship seemed to think it knew him. He explored further, moving through corridors that curved in ways that made no sense. The ship was larger on the inside than it should have been. That was impossible, but so was everything else about this day. Then he found the cargo hold. It was empty except for one thing, a door at the far end that should not exist. He had studied the ship's hologram at the auction. He remembered the layout clearly. There was no door here. There was no room behind this wall. But there it was, a sealed door hidden behind cargo containers that had been pushed aside long ago. Approached slowly. His hand was shaking as he reached for the control panel beside the door. Part of him wanted to turn around. Part of him wanted to leave this ship and never come back. But a larger part of him needed to know. The door slid open. The room beyond was small and dark. Frost covered the walls. In the center, surrounded by machines that hummed with fatting power, was a stasis pod. The glass was clouded with ice but could see a shape inside. A human shape. He wiped the frost away with his sleeve. A face stared back at him through the glass. A young woman, eyes closed, skin pale, frozen in time. She looked peaceful. She looked like she was sleeping. And then her eyes opened. Jumped back, his heart pounding. The woman's lips moved behind the glass. She was trying to speak. She was trying to say something. The machines around the pod began to beep. Warning lights flashed. The ice on the glass began to melt. Slowly, with a sound like breaking bones, the pod began to open. Stood frozen as the woman took her first breath in what might have been centuries. Her eyes found his. They were dark and confused and afraid. "Where am I?" she whispered in Korean, Old Korean, a dialect that barely recognized. "What year is it?" He could not answer. He did not know how. The woman sat up slowly, shivering in the cold air. She looked at her hands like she had never seen them before. Then she looked at. "Please," she said, "I need to know, how long was I asleep?" Swallowed hard. He looked at the machines around her, at the dates displayed on the flickering screens. He did the math in his head. Then he did it again because the first answer could not be right. But it was. "Almost 300 years," he said. The woman's face went pale. Her hands began to shake. And somewhere deep in the ship, something began to beep. a signal that would later learn had just alerted half the galaxy to their location. But he did not know that yet. All he knew was that he had bought a ship for 800 credits, and inside that ship, he had found something worth more than all the credits in the universe. He had found a secret that someone had worked very hard to hide. And now that secret was awake. Her name was, and she did not believe she had been asleep for 300 years. At first she thought was lying. Then she thought he was crazy. Then she saw the stars outside the ship's window, unfamiliar patterns in an unfamiliar sky, and she stopped talking altogether. Gave her time. He found blankets in a storage compartment and wrapped them around her shoulders. He made tea using the ship's food synthesizer, which created things that looked like tea but tasted like nothing he remembered from Earth. Held the cup in both hands and stared at the wall. "I remember the launch," she said finally. Her voice was quiet, like she was afraid of her own words. "I remember the scientists. They told us we were going to a new world. They said when we woke up everything would be ready. Houses, farms, a new life." She looked at with eyes that carried too much pain. "They promised us," she said. "They promised." Sat across from her in the small kitchen area. The ship hummed around them, its systems running quietly in the background. He had 1,000 questions, but he did not know where to start. "The year is 2347, he said gently. "Humanity made first contact with aliens about 15 years ago. We have colonies now, small ones. We are still considered new, young. The other species in the galaxy do not think much of us." Laughed. It was not a happy sound. "When I left Earth, it was 2031, she said. "We did not know there were aliens. We thought we were alone in the universe. The government told us we were the first, the brave pioneers who would carry humanity to the stars." She set down her tea. "How many of us were there?" asked. 200, said. "All volunteers, all young. They told us we were chosen because we were healthy and strong. They said our children would build the new world." "Do you know where the others are?" Shook her head slowly. "I remember going into the pod, I remember the cold. Then I remember waking up here with you looking at me through the glass." She paused. "That is all. Everything between is just nothing." Thought about this. 200 people sent into space before humanity even knew the galaxy was full of other species. A secret mission that had been erased from history. And somehow, one survivor had ended up in a ship that was sold at a forgotten auction on a forgotten station. None of it made sense. Over the next few days, tried to learn more about the ship while recovered her strength. The cruiser had no name, no registration, no history that he could find in any database. Its technology was unlike anything humans had ever built, but it was also unlike anything the or any other species used. The ship was something new, something different, something that should not exist. And it responded to in ways that made him nervous. Doors opened before he reached them. The food synthesizer learned his preferences within hours. The navigation system suggested routes he had only thought about in his head. It was like the ship was reading his mind. "This vessel is strange," said one morning. She was walking through the corridors now, though she still moved slowly. 300 years of sleep had left her body weak. "It feels alive, like it is watching us." Nodded. He had felt the same thing but had not wanted to say it out loud. "Maybe it is," he said. "I do not understand the technology. I have never seen anything like it." Stopped walking. She touched the wall with her fingertips, and the surface rippled under her hand like water. "The scientists on my mission," she said slowly. "They talked about something, a project. They called it different things, the seed program, the Genesis project. They never explained what it really was, but they were very interested in our blood." "Your blood." "They took samples every week," said. "They said it was for health monitoring, but there were so many tests, so many questions about our families, our histories, our genes. I thought it was strange, but we trusted them. We thought they were taking care of us." felt a cold feeling grow in his stomach. He said carefully, "Do you know what they were looking for, what they found?" She shook her head. "I was just a volunteer, a nobody. They did not tell us anything." But someone knew. Someone had kept alive for 3 centuries. Someone had hidden her on this ship. Someone had made sure she was not found until now. The answer came 3 days later, when tried to access the ship's deep memory banks. Most ships kept logs, flight records, maintenance data. This ship had all of that, but it also had something else, files that were locked behind security measures he had never seen before. Encryption so complex that breaking it should have been impossible. But when touched the console, the files opened for her. They both stared at the screen as information flooded across it. Medical records, genetic profiles, research notes written in languages that had to be translated, and at the center of it all, 2 words that kept repeating over and over. Genesis code. "I do not understand," whispered. "What is this?" Read the files as fast as he could, his hands shaking. The Genesis code was a biological template, a modification to human DNA that allowed the body to adapt to any environment, any atmosphere, any temperature, any gravity. A human with the Genesis code could survive on worlds that would kill any other species in seconds. The scientists of 2031 had not just sent colonists into space. They had used those colonists as carriers. They had woven the Genesis code into their cells, hoping it would activate when they reached their destination. But something had gone wrong. The ship had been lost. The mission had been forgotten, and had drifted through the darkness for 300 years, carrying a secret inside her that she never knew existed. "This is impossible," said. Her voice was shaking now. "I am just a normal person. I am nobody." Looked at her. He thought about how the ship responded to her touch. He thought about how the files had opened when she asked. He thought about the warm feeling that came from the walls when she walked past. "I do not think you are nobody," he said. "I think you might be the most important person in the galaxy." The next morning, they discovered they were being followed. The ship's sensors detected 3 vessels at the edge of scanning range. They were keeping their distance, staying just far enough away to avoid detection by normal equipment. But this ship's sensors were not normal. They could see things that should have been invisible. The 3 vessels were military. They carried weapons that could destroy a small moon, and their markings showed a symbol that recognized from his years working in alien space, a black circle surrounded by 7 silver stars. The Dominion of. "Who are they?" asked, looking at the display. His mouth went dry. "They are one of the oldest powers in the galaxy. They have existed for 10,000 years. They conquered hundreds of worlds before humanity even invented fire." "Why are they following us?" Did not answer, but he knew. The signal that had gone out when the stasis pod opened, someone had been listening. Someone who understood what the Genesis code was worth. The Galactic Council had rules about genetic modification. The technology was controlled, regulated, shared only among the oldest species who had proven they could be trusted with such power. But the Genesis code was different. It was better than anything the Council had ever seen, and whoever controlled it would have an advantage that could change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The Dominion wanted that advantage, and they would not stop until they had it. "We need to run," said. "Where?" asked. He thought about his options. They could not go to any station controlled by the Council. The Dominion had influence everywhere. They could not hide in normal space. Those military ships would find them eventually. They needed help. They needed someone who understood what they were dealing with. Then he remembered a name, a rumor he had heard years ago, back when he was still hauling cargo through the Outer Rim. There was a human smuggler who had been operating in alien space for decades, a woman who knew secrets that others had forgotten, a woman who owed no loyalty to anyone except herself. Her name was, And if anyone could help them understand what was happening, it was her. "I know someone," said, "but finding her will not be easy, and even if we do, she might not want to help." Looked at the display. The 3 Dominion ships were still there, waiting in the darkness. "We do not have a choice," she said. "Whatever is inside me, I need to understand it. I need to know why I was kept alive for so long. I need to know what I am." Nodded, he turned to the navigation console and began plotting a course through uncharted space. It would be dangerous, it would be difficult, but it was their only chance. Behind them, the Dominion ships began to move. The hunt had begun. The Outer Rim was a place where rules did not exist and hope went to die. Past the comfortable stations and protected trade routes of Council space, there was only darkness and danger. Pirates hunted cargo ships. Criminals sold things that should never be sold. And species that the Council had rejected made their homes in the shadows. It was the perfect place to hide. It was also the perfect place to find someone like. Pushed the cruiser hard for 3 days, using routes that were not on any official map. The Dominion ships followed for the first day, then fell back when he entered a region known as the Shattered Belt, a field of broken asteroids left over from a war that nobody remembered. No sane pilot would fly through the Shattered Belt. The rocks moved in patterns that seemed random but were actually deadly. One wrong turn could send you crashing into a mountain of iron moving faster than a bullet. But the cruiser's navigation system knew the way. It guided through gaps that should have been too small, around obstacles that appeared from nowhere, until finally they emerged on the other side into clear space. The Dominion ships did not follow. They were waiting for them to come back. "Where are we going?" asked. She was stronger now, moving through the ship without needing to rest every few minutes. But there was still fear in her eyes, fear of the future, fear of what she was becoming. "There is a station on the edge of the belt," said. "It has no name, no official existence. But if you need to find someone who does not want to be found, it is the place to start." The station appeared on their sensors 2 hours later. It was built from the remains of old ships welded together into something that almost resembled a structure. Lights flickered in the windows. Smoke rose from vents that should not have been smoking. The whole thing looked like it could fall apart at any moment. "This is safe?" asked doubtfully. "No," admitted, "but safe is not an option right now." They docked at a port that had seen better days and walked into the station. The air smelled like metal and sweat and something burning. Beings of a dozen different species moved through corridors that were too narrow and ceilings that were too low. Nobody looked at them directly, but felt eyes on them from every shadow. He asked questions at bars and trading posts, always careful about what he revealed. He was looking for a human smuggler, a woman who dealt in information, a ghost who had operated in the Outer Rim longer than most humans had been in space. Most beings laughed at him. Some threatened him. One tried to sell him a map that he knew was fake. Then, on the second day, someone finally gave him a real answer. "Is not here," the informant said. He was with missing scales and a voice like gravel. "But she has people who watch for her. Leave a message. If she wants to find you, she will." Left a message with his ship's identification code and a simple phrase. "I have something from the old days, before first contact. She will want to see it." Then he waited. 3 days passed, and stayed on the ship, venturing out only when necessary. The Dominion ships had not appeared, but knew they were still searching. They had resources that he could not imagine, spies in places he would never suspect. It was only a matter of time before they found the station. On the 4th day, the ship's sensors detected a small vessel approaching. It was moving without running lights, almost invisible against the darkness of space, but the cruiser saw it anyway. "We have a visitor," said. The vessel docked without permission, attaching itself to the cruiser's hull like a parasite. A moment later, the airlock opened, and a woman stepped inside. She was older than expected. Her hair was gray and cut short. Her face was lined with years of hard living. She wore clothes that had been repaired many times, practical, dark, designed to blend into shadows. But her eyes were sharp and bright, taking in everything at once. "You are," she said. It was not a question. "You are," he replied. She nodded and walked past him into the ship, examining the walls and the controls with obvious interest. "This is not human technology," she said. "It is not council technology either. Where did you get this ship?" An auction said, "On 7. Laughed, a dry, humorless sound. An auction. The Dominion is sending warships after you because of something you bought at an auction." She shook her head. "I have heard many stories in my life. This might be the strangest." "I am not here because of the ship," said. "I am here because of what was inside it." He led to the small room where they had found Stasis Pod, was waiting there, sitting on a chair that the ship had created for her. She looked up when they entered. Stopped walking, her eyes went wide. "Impossible," she whispered. "You know what she is?" asked. Did not answer immediately. She walked slowly toward, studying her like she was looking at a ghost. "I was a child when humanity made first contact," said finally. "But my grandmother was alive before that. She told me stories, stories that the government tried to erase, stories about a secret mission, about volunteers who went into space and never came back." She stopped in front of the Genesis Project, she said. "Everyone thinks it was a myth, a legend that humans told to feel important, but my grandmother believed it was real. She said she knew one of the volunteers, a young woman who disappeared one day and was never seen again." His hands were shaking. "What was her name, the volunteer your grandmother knew?" Smiled sadly. "She never told me, but she always said the woman was brave, braver than anyone she had ever met. She said that woman was going to save humanity, even if humanity never knew it." Tears rolled down his face. She did not wipe them away. "I did not feel brave," she said. "I was scared every day. I just wanted to help. I just wanted to do something that mattered." Sat down across from her. "What you carry inside you matters more than you know. The Genesis Code is not just about survival. It is about potential. It is about what humanity could become." She turned to look at. "The Dominion does not just want the code for themselves," she explained. "They want to make sure no one else has it. If humans had the ability to survive anywhere, to adapt to any world, we would no longer be primitives struggling at the edge of the galaxy. We would be a threat, a real threat to the power structures that have existed for thousands of years." Felt the weight of her words, "So they want to destroy it." "They want to control it," corrected, "or destroy it. Either way, they cannot let it spread. If the Genesis Code got out, if it became available to all humans, everything would change." "Then we need to hide," said. "We need to run until they give up." Shook her head. "They will never give up. The Dominion has waited 10,000 years to maintain their power. They will hunt you until the end of time if they have to." "Then what do we do?" Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer, like she was sharing a secret she had kept for a very long time. "There is a place," she said, "a human colony that exists outside Council space. It was founded by people like me, humans who got tired of being treated like primitives, who got tired of following rules that were designed to keep us small." "I have never heard of any such place," said. "That is the point," replied. "It is hidden, protected. The Dominion knows it exists, but they have never been able to find it. The colony moves constantly, using technology that even the Council does not understand." She looked at. "They would protect you," she said. "They would understand what you carry, and they would help you use it not as a weapon but as a gift for all humanity." Met her eyes. "What is this place called?" Smiled. It was the first real smile had seen from her. "New," she said, "and if you are willing to trust me, I can take you there." She looked back at him. They had known each other for only a few weeks, but in that time they had shared more than most people shared in a lifetime. They had faced fear together. They had found hope together. And now they had to make a choice together. Nodded slowly. "We trust you," said. Stood up. "Then we leave now. The Dominion has eyes everywhere and they are getting closer. We have maybe 12 hours before they find the station." She walked toward the airlock, then stopped and turned back. "One more thing," she said. "The journey to New takes 3 months through unmapped space. It will be dangerous. Some do not survive. Are you prepared for that?" Thought about his old life, his lost ship, his failed dreams. Then he thought about the impossible things she carried inside her. He thought about what humanity could become if given the chance. "I have been preparing my whole life," he said. "I just did not know it until now." Nodded, and in the darkness outside the ship, the Dominion fleet began to move, following a trail of signals that would lead them exactly where and had been. But by the time they arrived, the station would be empty, and the real journey would have finally begun. The journey through unmapped space was like traveling through a dream that never ended. Stars passed by in colors had never seen before. Nebulas stretched across the darkness like paintings made by gods. And always there was silence, the deep, heavy silence of places where no one had ever been. 3 months was a long time to spend in a ship with only 2 other people, but found that he did not mind. Kept to herself mostly, spending hours at the navigation console, charting paths through regions that existed on no map. She had made this journey before, she said, many times, but each time was different. The stars moved. The safe routes changed. Nothing stayed the same in unmapped space. Spent her days learning about the world she had woken up in. The ship's computer held centuries of history, the rise and fall of empires, the discovery of alien species, the long and difficult story of humanity's place in the galaxy. She read for hours at a time, her face changing as she absorbed each new piece of information. Sometimes she cried, sometimes she laughed. Most of the time she just sat in silence, staring at words that described a future she had never imagined. "I was supposed to build a farm," she told one night. They were sitting in the observation room, watching stars drift past the window. "That was my job in the colony. I studied agriculture. I knew how to grow things in difficult soil, how to make food from almost nothing." She smiled sadly. "I thought I would spend my life planting seeds and watching them grow. I never imagined any of this." Looked at her. In the soft light of the stars, she looked younger than her years. It was easy to forget that she was technically over 300 years old. "You are still planting seeds," he said, "just different ones." Was quiet for a moment, then she reached out and took his hand. "Thank you," she said, "for finding me, for not leaving me behind." "I did not find you," said. "You were waiting. I just happened to be the one who opened the door." They sat together in the darkness, 2 humans lost in a galaxy that had never truly welcomed their kind, and for the first time in his life, did not feel alone. The weeks passed slowly, and grew closer, sharing stories of their lives before they met. He told her about his cargo ship, about the years he spent moving goods between colonies, about the day he lost everything because the galaxy had decided humans were not worth protecting. She told him about Earth in 2031, a world he barely recognized. A world without stations in space, without alien contact, without the knowledge that humanity was just a small part of something much larger. "We thought we were so advanced," said. "We thought going to space was the greatest achievement in human history. We had no idea how small we really were." "We are still small," admitted. "The Council treats us like children. The Dominion thinks we are insects. Most species do not even know our name." Shook her head. "We are not small, we just have not shown them what we can become." Her words stayed with long after their conversation ended. He thought about them when he slept. He thought about them when he watched the stars. He thought about them when he looked at and saw the impossible thing she carried inside her. What could humanity become? What would they look like if they had the power to survive anywhere, to adapt to anything, to spread across the galaxy like seeds carried by the wind? He did not know, but for the first time he wanted to find out. On the 73rd day of their journey, they saw new. It was not what expected. He had imagined a single station, maybe a few ships, a small community of rebels hiding from the galaxy. What he saw instead was a fleet. Thousands of ships hung in the darkness around a dying star. Cargo vessels, military cruisers, transport ships filled with families and children. Old and new, damaged and perfect, they floated together in formations that should have been impossible to maintain. And at the center of them all was a ship larger than anything had ever seen. A vessel that looked like it had been built from 100 different ships welded together into something that description. "The horizon," said. Her voice was thick with emotion. "The heart of new, it is where the Admiral lives. It is where all decisions are made." The Admiral asked. Said, "She founded this place 30 years ago. She was a slave of the Council, one of the humans they took before first contact when they were studying us like animals. She escaped. She fought her way to freedom, and she built all of this." Their ship was met by escort vessels and guided to a docking port on the horizon. When they stepped off the ramp, they found themselves in a corridor filled with people. Humans of every age and type walked past them, workers carrying tools, soldiers in makeshift armor, children running and laughing in the strange gravity of the ship. For the first time since leaving Earth's sphere, was surrounded entirely by his own species. "This way," said, "the Admiral is waiting." They walked through the horizon for what felt like hours, passing through chambers that served as markets, hospitals, schools, and homes. The ship was not just a vessel, it was a city, a living, breathing community of humans who had chosen to leave everything behind for a chance at freedom. Finally, they reached a large door guarded by 2 soldiers. The door opened, and they stepped into a room filled with light. Admiral stood at a window that looked out over the fleet. She was older than expected, her hair was white, and her face was lined with decades of hard decisions. But her eyes were sharp and clear, and when she turned to look at them, he felt the full weight of her attention. Said, her voice was soft but carried the force of someone used to command. "You brought guests." "More than guests," replied. "I brought what we have been waiting for." His eyes moved too. They widened slightly, a reaction so small that most people would have missed it, but saw it. He saw the recognition in her face. "The Genesis Code," whispered. "It is real." Stepped forward. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "I carry something inside me," she said. "Something I did not ask for and do not understand. I have been asleep for 300 years. I have been hunted by people who want to use me or destroy me. I came here because I was told you could help me understand what I am." Studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled, a smile that transformed her face from stern to kind. "You are not a what," she said. "You are a who. You are the bravest woman I have never met, and you are welcome here." She walked forward and took his hands in her own. "The Genesis Code is not just about survival," said. "It is about potential. It is about the future that humanity was always meant to have. For centuries, we have been told that we are weak, that we are limited, that we must accept our place at the bottom of the galaxy's ladder." Her eyes burned with conviction. "But you are proof that none of that is true. You are proof that our ancestors dreamed bigger than anyone knew. You are proof that humanity has always been reaching for the stars, and that nothing in the universe can stop us." His tears fell freely now. "I do not know how to be what you need me to be. I do not know how to save anyone. I am just a farmer who wanted to grow things." Laughed gently. "Then grow things, grow hope, grow possibility, grow a future that no one else believed was possible." She released hands and turned to look at. "And you," she said. The man who found her. The man who chose to run instead of sell. You are not a hero. You are just a person who did the right thing when it would have been easier to do the wrong thing. That is rarer than you know. Did not know what to say. He had never thought of himself as anything special. Welcome to New said, welcome home. But even as she spoke, alarms began to sound throughout the ship. The lights flickered. Voices shouted in the corridors outside. A soldier burst through the door, his face pale with fear. Admiral, he gasped, the Dominion fleet, they found us, they are coming. His expression did not change. She simply nodded, as if she had been expecting this moment her entire life. How many ships? She asked. 300, the soldier said, maybe more. Felt his blood turn to ice. 300 warships. Against a refugee fleet of perhaps 60 combat-capable vessels. It was not a battle, it was an execution. But only smiled. Then we will have to show them what humanity is made of, she said. Tell the fleet to prepare for battle. She turned to look at and tell our guests to find somewhere safe. This is going to be the fight of our lives. Outside the window, in the darkness of unmapped space, the first Dominion ships began to appear on the sensors. The final confrontation was about to begin. The Dominion fleet emerged from the darkness like a wave of death. 312 warships, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a city. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons already charging, their shields glowing with power that had conquered 1,000 worlds. Against them stood 63 human vessels, old cargo ships with weapons welded to their hulls, converted transports that had never been designed for combat, a handful of real military cruisers that had been stolen or salvaged over decades of survival. It should have been over in minutes. But the Dominion had never fought humans before. Not really. They had pushed them around. They had taxed them. They had treated them like insects not worth the effort of stepping on. They had never seen what happened when humans had nothing left to lose. Admiral stood on the bridge of the horizon, watching the enemy approach on the main display. Around her, officers worked at their stations with calm efficiency. Nobody panicked. Nobody ran. They had been preparing for this moment their entire lives. All ships, said, her voice carried across the fleet by the communication system. This is the Admiral. The Dominion has found us. They think they are here to finish what they started 10,000 years ago, to remind the galaxy that young species have no right to exist. She paused, letting the silence speak. They are wrong. We are not young. We are not weak. We are the children of Earth, and our ancestors were dreaming of the stars before the Dominion even existed. Today, we prove that we belong here. Today, we show them what it means to fight humans. Across the fleet, cheers erupted from 63 ships. Scatter formation, commanded. Make them chase us. Make them bleed for every meter they take. The human fleet broke apart like seeds in the wind. Ships flew in every direction, making themselves impossible to target with the Dominion's precise weapons. The enemy commanders hesitated. They were used to battles where fleets stayed in formation, where rules were followed, where everything happened according to plans made centuries ago. Humans did not follow those rules. On the cruiser that had bought at auction, watched the battle unfold through the observation window. She had wanted to fight, but had been clear. She was too important to risk. The Genesis code inside her was the future of humanity. It could not be destroyed in a battle that might be lost. But refused to sit in safety while others died for her. The ship systems, she said suddenly. They respond to me, they always have. Looked at her, what are you thinking? Closed her eyes and placed her hands on the wall. The strange material hummed under her touch, just as it always did. But this time, she reached deeper. She asked the ship to show her what it really was. And the ship answered. Information flooded her mind. The cruiser was not just a ship, it was a seed. a vessel designed by the original Genesis project to carry not just colonists, but knowledge, technology, the combined wisdom of humanity's greatest minds, preserved in systems that no alien species could understand, including something very specific, a frequency that could disrupt Dominion weapons systems. "I can help," said, opening her eyes. "I know how to fight them." She told what she had learned. He did not hesitate. Within minutes, he had the ship broadcasting the signal across the entire battlefield. The effect was immediate. Dominion targeting computers went haywire. Weapons that should have hit their targets fired into empty space. Shields flickered and failed at critical moments. The precision that had won the Dominion their empire suddenly became their greatest weakness. Human pilots saw their chance and took it. A cargo ship named the Morning Dream flew directly into the engine section of a Dominion destroyer, its crew evacuating at the last moment before the collision tore both vessels apart. A transport called the Soul Spirit rammed a cruiser's weapons array, crippling it before the enemy could fire a single shot. Engineers on a dozen ships rerouted power in ways that should have been impossible, overloading their weapons for single devastating attacks before their reactors failed. And through it all, human voices filled the communication channels. Encouragement, prayers, battle cries in languages that the Dominion had never bothered to learn. "They are falling back," someone shouted on the horizon's bridge. Watched the display with tears in her eyes. The Dominion had lost nearly half their fleet in less than 2 hours. The rest were retreating, their formations broken, their commanders unable to understand what had happened. They had expected insects. They had found something else entirely. But the battle was not over yet. The Dominion flagship had not retreated. It hung in space alone, its massive weapons still active, its commander unwilling to accept defeat. As the other ships fled, the flagship charged directly at the horizon. Admiral, an officer said quietly, "Their main weapon is charging if it hits us." "I know," said. She looked at the display. The flagship was too large, too powerful to destroy with their remaining forces. They could run, but the horizon was too slow. The other ships had scattered too far to help in time. This was the moment she had always known would come. The moment when everything depended on one choice. "All ships," said, "protect the civilians, get them to the evacuation point. I will handle this." "Admiral, no. That is an order." Her voice was calm, steady, final. But before she could give the command to ram the flagship, a new signal appeared on the display. A small vessel, moving impossibly fast, flying directly toward the Dominion ship. It was cruiser. "What are you doing?" demanded over the communication channel. His voice came back, steady despite the fear he must have been feeling. "What you are going to do, but this ship has something yours does not." Spoke next. Her voice was different now, stronger, clearer, filled with a power that had been sleeping inside her for 3 centuries. "The Genesis Code is not just about survival," she said. "It is about adaptation, about becoming what we need to become. The scientists who created it understood something that the Dominion never will. Humanity does not just survive. We transform. We grow. We become more than we were." The cruiser did not slow down. It flew directly into the flagship's weapon array just as the main cannon fired. The two energies met and combined in a way that physics said was impossible. And then something happened that would be debated by scientists for centuries to come. The cruiser exploded, but instead of fire and destruction, there was light. Pure, brilliant light that spread outward like a wave, passing through every ship in the area, touching every person on every vessel. When the light faded, the Dominion flagship was dark and drifting. Its systems had shut down completely. Its crew was alive but unconscious. The weapon that should have destroyed the horizon had been. And floated in space, surrounded by debris, very much alive. The Genesis Code had not just been about adapting to environments. It had been about adapting to anything, including the energy of an alien weapon. The evacuation ships picked them up an hour later, was unconscious but stable, had a broken arm and more bruises than he could count, but they were alive. And the Dominion was retreating, carrying word of what they had witnessed back to the Galactic Council. The aftermath was quiet. The human fleet regrouped around the horizon, mourning their losses but celebrating their survival. They had won. Against impossible odds, against an enemy that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, they had won. Visited in the medical bay after she woke up, the younger woman looked exhausted but at peace. The Genesis code said, "It changed when I used it, I can feel it. It is not just mine anymore." Nodded slowly. Our scientists detected the same thing. The light that spread from your ship, it carried a piece of the code with it. Everyone it touched was affected. Everyone. Everyone in the fleet. Perhaps everyone on the Dominion ships as well. The code is adapting just as it was designed to do, but now it is adapting to spread itself. Closed her eyes. Then it is no longer a secret. It belongs to everyone now. Is that what you want? Thought about the question for a long time. She thought about the scientists who had created her, the centuries she had spent sleeping, the people who had died protecting her, and the man who had found her in a forgotten ship at a forgotten auction, who had risked everything for a stranger. Yes, she said. The Genesis Code was never meant for one person or one group. It was meant for humanity, all of humanity. And now, maybe, we can finally become what we were always supposed to be. 50 years later, human colonies dotted the galaxy. They lived on frozen moons where the temperature dropped below what most species could survive. They built cities in atmospheres that would have killed their ancestors in seconds. They swam in oceans of liquid methane and walked on worlds where the gravity was 10 times stronger than Earth. The Galactic Council watched with a mixture of fear and wonder. The species they had dismissed as primitives had become something unprecedented. Not conquerors, not destroyers, just survivors, adapters, neighbors who could live anywhere and thrive everywhere. Historians called it the flowering. And it all started with an empty auction on a forgotten station, where a man with 847 credits to his name bought a ship for 800 and found something that changed everything. And lived to see the beginning of the flowering. They settled on a world that had no name yet, where purple trees grew under an orange sky and the rain tasted like honey. They built a farm, just as had always dreamed. They planted seeds and watched them grow. And sometimes, in the evening, they would sit on their porch and look up at the stars, remembering the journey that had brought them there. "Do you ever regret it?" asked one night. "Being found, being woken up, all of this." Took his hand and smiled. "Not for a single moment," she said. "I spent 300 years waiting for someone to find me. I spent my whole life dreaming of a future I could not imagine. And now I am here with you, watching our children play under an alien sun. How could I regret that?" Did not answer. He did not need to. He simply held her hand and watched the stars, knowing that somewhere out there humanity was still growing, still adapting, still becoming something new. The universe had tried to keep them small. It had failed. And the future was just beginning.